So first of all, just like tell us a little about yourself, just like personally, but also how did you even get interested, and what was your initial entry into this industry?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't put myself in the Nepo baby sort of category to any stretch, but it was a cousin of mine
Mm-hmm.
who had a small business um, as a CD broker.
Mm-hmm.
So, for the uninitiated, broker meaning like you're not the plant yourself, but you represent a bunch of clients and then can go to the plant and say, we have volume, give us a price break. And then to the labels, you're saying, we'll beat the plant up for you because, they won't listen to a smaller, whatever, right?
So it's almost like a band having a manager, and the manager deals with the record label.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Um, so my cousin had a small CD brokerage company,
Mm-hmm.
and I started working there, like doing like co-op in high school, working free shifts to pass a course.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of opened my eyes, right? Because like I knew I wanted to get involved with music, just like a lot of people, but it's hard to just figure out what the application of that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
In high school, I was thinking, okay, well, I guess I have to mix it with business.
Mm-hmm.
Business is not my primary motivator, it's music. Let me take these math prerequisites so that I can find a university class that would accept me, or university that would accept me. That didn't go very well for me, right? In fact, I didn't get very far in post-secondary. I did a year and decided it wasn't really for me. So I started leaning more on that brokerage company. I got a part-time job, and I was also working at a record store and playing in bands and stuff, trying to fill my life up with music as much as I could. And the part-time job turned into a full-time job. That CD brokerage company sort of cratered after a while. And my cousin and I, just the two of us, because there was 4 or 5 people who were part of the CD brokerage, started Samo. He got tired. My cousin got tired of being poor. He left. I decided I could be poor for a little longer, so I stayed, and I took over. Lots of debt, running out of a kind of garagey sort of space. Hired some friends. So there was just a small ragtag group of us. That was Samo Media.
Where'd you come up with the name, or how did the name where'd that come from?
Well, Samo, at the time in the early 2000s, my cousin couldn't think of a name, so I volunteered because I really wanted to have some creative impact there, or input. I loved the artist Jean-Michel Basquiat, and Samo was his tag name. Ironically, I think it has a bit of like a negative sort of connotation, same old shit.
Yeah.
But I loved his style. I loved his art and interviews I saw with him. I don't know. I was just very inspired by him.
Uh-huh.
And I could just picture picking up the phone and going, Samo. And it just sounds like, I think of the same thing. We got a dog a few years ago, and I was thinking, what is the name I could scream across the park when this dog is running away from me that wouldn't send a shudder through my spine? I think of names that way, right?
What did you come up with?
His name is Mac, which is an awesome name.
That's a great name.
One syllable. I don't know. It just hits. So Samo, yeah, it felt like I was inspired by the reference material there and loved the sound of it. And it was as simple as that.
So how did you find clients? Because what year was this?
2002.
How were you finding clients? Because the internet was a thing, but it wasn't a super evolved thing. Obviously not what I wanted to become. How did you find clients? How did you even how did you figure out how to press a record and get all these things done?
Well, I did it badly at first. In fact, that CD brokerage company, I convinced them to think about vinyl. So technically I was doing it in the late 90s too. We worked with this, they're all independent, but we worked with this vinyl record plant in Markham, near where I grew up, called Acme Vinyl. And they were kind of young, scrappy kids. And I was an even younger, scrappier kid. So we made mistakes together, kind of thing.
How old were you at the time?
I was, let's say maybe we first started doing vinyl in 99 or something, so I would have been 19. Yeah. When I took over Samo, I was 25.
Okay, so you're 19, but what made you at 19 be like, oh, we should do vinyl? What was that instinct?
It was completely divorced from any business sense. It was just, we make CDs, but vinyl is cooler.
Yeah.
Can I please talk to these guys? I did some research. There's a plant called Acme down the road or whatever. It was just that.
And so you call them up?
Yeah, I can't even remember a lot of the early conversations there. So I remember actually when Acme closed, there was a bailiff's hearing because all the equipment was locked, right? Well, it was seized. And I remember looking at it in the early 2000s being like, should I buy this stuff? I don't know. I don't understand how it works, but I could figure it out. And I'm glad I didn't do that because I would have been much further, I would have been deeply submerged in hot water. But yeah, it was just like anything, you expose yourself to conversations and eventually the terms start to repeat themselves and they start making a little more sense each time.
Well, the reason I'm pushing on this is you mentioned coming up in the punk scene and like playing in bands and all that. And I don't want to relate this only to bands because of course people all over the world do this, but that kind of like figuring something out that you have no right to figure it out, like where it's like, oh, I'm just going to figure out record pressing, no background in it and no real music background outside of like playing in punk bands. And that being like, oh, I'll just like pay attention to this. I'll do a little bit of research. I'll make it happen. On one side, you could say, well, yeah, most people do that, but not most people do that and then start a business that they grow over years and make it their thing. They might do that about like how to replace their kitchen floor, right? Like, and the intricacies specifically of vinyl. What I find so interesting about your story of that, like, well, this makes no sense, but I'm going to do it anyways.
Yeah, it's maybe I'm not giving myself enough credit when I say this, but I feel like I almost sort of fell into it a little bit. And then the rest of it was just sharpening up my survival skills. Because you owned a record label, so you know this. Like if you don't figure out a system for paying bills, everything is going to collapse. So you just have to figure it out, or it's over. And so I was motivated by that a lot, which really helped me in my personal life actually to just gain more confidence in general, right? Because you learn to depend on yourself, and that's a very motivating feeling. Such to the extent now that there's a lot of conversations I find myself in that I would have been very afraid of in the early 2000s, right?
So you're figuring it out, you're building confidence, you're kind of figuring yourself out, figuring the business out, and you go out basically on your own. You're saying, this is my company now. I'm going to assume all the debt, all the risk, all of those things. How did you build a client base based on vinyl and the other parts of the media that would be involved?
So again, some of that was luck because vinyl started to grow. And as it started to grow, we were in a good position. So I contacted a company called Rainbow Records, which isn't around anymore. You know them, I'm sure.
That was my favorite pressing plant of all time.
Yeah, right. I mean, they were classic.
But the vinyl, like, just felt right. It just felt right.
And a funny thing, too, is that the head of quality control at Rainbow, someone named Felipe, he now works at Precision. We came across each other years later. It's like, oh my God, I remember talking about test pressings with you. You'd be, great fit for this role. But we started talking to Rainbow just, I think, before the vinyl boom really sort of set in, before the murmurs of it were happening. Acme had gone down and we needed a new partner. So we reached out to Rainbow in California, and they were just like you were saying, where the owner would pick up the phone and be like, who is this guy? Wow, let me figure out why someone is giving me this quantity of records on this purchase order. We developed a good relationship with them because, we were able to say there was no pressing plant or broker in Canada. It was just us at the time. So we represented an interesting opportunity where we could consolidate independent business for them in Canada. And we became a bit of an access point. We would make records at Rainbow, 2006, 2007, bring them in on pallets to Samo. And by 2010, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I found out about an opportunity to purchase another crusty old machine that was designed to manufacture record jackets. And so I actually started a second company with a friend of mine named Alex Durlak, who was a book publisher and bookmaker. And he had manufacturing experience, I had vinyl experience. So now we brought these two things together under one roof, where we were bringing in the vinyl records that we were brokering from Rainbow, making record jackets ourselves, which felt good to be a manufacturer, right? And we were packaging it with a group of people that we hired locally. Like we had, staff now who were in assembly departments. department singular.
Yeah.
And I think that actually that was interesting to local bands and labels. We had a story to tell. There wasn't that many people doing it. And Rainbow, were really well priced, right? And so we were able to offer something that, was better than some quotes that people would get otherwise.